Hey everyone, and welcome back to a brand new explainer. Today, we are strapping in for an absolute masterclass. I'm talking about a deep, high-energy dive right into the world of startups. You know, whether you're a founder with a million-dollar idea scribbled on a coffee shop napkin, or you're just kind of fascinated by how these tiny ideas snowball into global giants, well, consider this your roadmap. We're going to cover the whole shebang, from that very first spark of inspiration all the way to a massive exit. So let's just dive right in.
Right off the bat, let's actually define what we're talking about here. Neil Blumenthal hit the nail on the head. He said, a startup is a company working to solve a problem where the solution is not obvious and success is not guaranteed. The two massive takeaways there, high risk and relentless innovation. You aren't just opening up a traditional mom-and-pop shop. You are literally jumping headfirst into the unknown to build something that hasn't been perfected yet.
But before we get into the nuts and bolts of it all, think about this for a second. Where did this all actually begin? I mean, small businesses have existed for centuries, right? People have been trading since the dawn of civilization. But the modern startup ecosystem? Take a guess. If you guessed right after the Second World War, you are absolutely spot on.
Which brings us to Section 1, the global startup boom.
Okay, so the modern startup culture actually laid its foundations between the 1940s and 1960s, right in the United States, specifically Silicon Valley. This was when tech companies really started spinning out of university research labs. Venture capital became an actual, real thing, and the semiconductor industry just took off like a rocket. We're talking absolute pioneers here like HP, Intel, and Apple. Then, from the 70s stretching into the 90s, that culture exploded globally, expanding into places like Japan and Germany. And fast forward to the 2000s, we see the birth of these massive, high-energy global hubs: London, Berlin, Bengaluru, Singapore, and Shenzhen.
All right, time for our very first general knowledge point. And honestly, this one is super fascinating. Did you know Israel is globally famous as the startup nation? Yeah, they absolutely earned that title. It came through incredibly strong government-backed innovation and this brilliant transfer of military technology straight over into the commercial sector. It's really a perfect example of how a geopolitical landscape can shape a massive economic boom.
Moving right along to Section 2, the Indian startup landscape.
So the Indian government definitely recognized the immense power of startups, but do you know what exact year they officially kickstarted their massive push? Well, here's another fantastic general knowledge point for you. The Startup India initiative was officially launched on January 16, 2016. That right there was the massive turning point. It really set the stage for this organized, aggressive growth we see in the Indian market today.
But, hold on, you can't just slap the word startup on any business to get all the perks. The Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, the DPIIT, laid out some pretty strict legal criteria. To be officially recognized in India, your entity must be under 10 years old from the date of incorporation. It needs to be a private company, a registered partnership, or an LLP. Plus, your turnover cannot exceed 100 crore in any financial year. And absolutely crucially, you must be working towards genuine innovation, wealth creation, or job creation. Oh, and a quick warning. Simply splitting up an already existing business, yeah, no way, that doesn't count. You got to build it from the ground up.
Let's jump into Section 3, the startup life cycle. So once you actually meet that definition, what does the journey look like? Well, it's a pretty structured flow. Step 1 is ideation. This is where you have the big idea, you define your target market, and you build out your MVP, your minimum viable product. Then step 2 is validation. You don't just guess here, you test that MVP with real, actual people to see if it works and gather feedback. Finally, step 3 is early transaction and retention. You get the product into the hands of targeted customers, and if they keep coming back, if your retention rate is solid, you have officially proven that your product has legs.
And hey, that brings us to an awesome bonus point. Listen to this. During that early transaction phase, startups don't just sit around twiddling their thumbs. They actively seek out seed funds or angel investors to acquire even more customers. And here's the real insider secret. This is also the exact phase where pivoting happens. Pivoting is basically when you radically shift your strategy to fit what the customers actually want. You might end up turning just one single feature of your app into the entire product. It's all about adapting to survive, you know? Which leads us into Section 4, registration and legal setup.
Now, adapting is great and all, but you absolutely need a solid legal foundation. The bureaucratic steps to register a startup in India are actually incredibly logical and seamless nowadays. It's basically a direct pipeline. You incorporate the business, you register with Startup India, get your DPI IT form, apply, handle the documentation, and boom, You've got your recognition number. The entire process is completely streamlined, and best of all, entirely online. But right there at step 1, what kind of legal entity should you actually form? Well, under the Companies Act of 2013, you've got options. A private company gives you great flexibility and definitely fewer legal headaches, though. Keep in mind you can't freely transfer shares. Now, if you want to raise massive capital later on, you might convert to a public company. That allows for free transferability of shares, but it brings some pretty strict legal scrutiny with it. Or what if you're flying solo but still really want that limited liability protection? The one-person company, or OPC, is a fantastic low-risk innovation designed exactly for solo founders.
All right, moving to Section 5, Benefits for Startup Founders.
Now, you might be wondering, why jump through all these official hoops? Because the government genuinely wants you to succeed. And guys, the rewards are just staggering. Once you're officially recognized, you get incredibly easy access to funds. We're talking about things like a massive 10,000 crore venture capital fund. You can secure a full tax holiday for 3 consecutive years under Section 80 IAC. Need to protect your brilliant idea? You get an 80% rebate on filing patents and 50% on trademarks. And my personal favorite perk? You can literally self-certify your compliance with 9 labor and 3 environmental laws through an app. It literally frees you up to focus on building your empire instead of just drowning in paperwork.
Okay, grab a pen because it is time for a major remembrance point. When you finally reach the final stage of the startup lifecycle, that's growth and exit, you might choose to scale up through mergers, acquisitions, or even an IPO. But you absolutely need to remember this. Mergers, amalgamations, and arrangements are strictly regulated under the Companies Act, specifically from Sections 230 to 240. So keep those sections tucked in your back pocket for when you finally hit the big time. And the legal framework supporting all of this? It's completely battle-tested. 2 absolutely vital case laws really shaped this environment. The Vodafone International Holdings case back in 2012 was monumental. It clarified taxation principles and massively boosted foreign investor confidence in India. Then, a bit later in 2017, the Innovative Industries case really strengthened the insolvency resolution process. Both of these landmark decisions created a much safer, highly predictable environment for investors to confidently back your vision.
So wow, we have covered everything today. From the post-war birth of Silicon Valley right down to the exact legal steps and massive tax benefits of launching a startup in India today, the global ecosystem is thriving, wealth is being created, and the tools are literally right there in front of you. So I'm going to leave you with this one thought. With all of this infrastructure ready and waiting, what's the next big startup hub going to be? And more importantly, what idea are you waiting to launch? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep innovating, and I'll see you in the next one.